Hello everyone, my name is Anders Nilsson and I'm the Technical Solutions Consultant covering performance testing for Micro Focus. I will present here today the latest What's New covering LRE 2021, including R1. And as usual, everything I'm presenting here today and more is available in the online help under the LRE Enterprise pages, where each release has its own What's New section, and there are also a few videos there. So if you would like to have a deeper look into what's new for any of the releases, then this is where you go for that. LRE 2021 was released back in January and had of course a number of improvements and enhancements, and R1 or Release 1 was released back in April, and I'll cover the details from both these releases in this presentation. If we start in the admin module, the multilingual support has now been expanded to include Spanish and Italian in the user interface, and this goes of course for the application side of LRE Enterprise as well. Then, due to the decoupling from ALM-QC, some features that were more part of Quality Center than of Performance Center in the past were, let's call it, lost when LRE 2020 was decoupled from QC. Those features are now slowly being reintroduced in these new releases, and one of those is now that when you want to create a new project, you now have the ability to create a new one and copy some of the contents and test assets from an existing project into your new one, meaning that you can now copy items like scripts or results over, and also users and roles as well. So that will save a lot of configuration time when creating a new project. The host module has seen some updates, and while they aren't really obvious from looking at the page, but the underlying technology used to display the host page has been modernized with the latest technologies. So I guess that we have to take their word for that. And finally, the alerts module now include an enhancement that can send alerts whenever a host becomes non-operational, which has been requested in the past by some customers. So if you have a number of on-premises load generators, you can now sign up and get an alert if one of those goes down, which will probably save time when used proactively. The alert notification email that goes out has also received a new email template, allowing you to customize the email alerts going out. If we look at the integration side of things, if you are using and that you have enabled SSO on your tenant, then you are now able to use SSO to authenticate when using the standalone tools ViewGen, Analysis, and the Entity Unlocker, although you have to make sure that you are using the latest versions of these applications for that to work. So this is for those users that like to connect, for example, ViewGen directly to LRE Enterprise, so that any script updates are directly reflected in LRE without the need to zip up the script and to manually upload it. This workflow works, of course, also without SSO by using the normal LRE credentials. Then, if you do have enabled SSO or LDAP on your tenant, and that you are using third-party integrations that still need to authenticate, such as Jenkins, Bamboo, or Git, for example, you can now generate access keys based on an existing user in LRE Enterprise. These keys are then used by the integrations and have the same access rights as the user that they are based upon. And again, these access keys are only required if you have SSO or LDAP enabled on your instance. So if you haven't, then you can use your normal credentials as usual, of course. There's been a few new monitors added to the lineup as well. And the first one is one that adds support for measuring statistics related to service virtualization during your test run. This monitor now supports measuring simulated services running both on Windows and on Linux environments. And I have to say that this one sounded interesting initially, that you could measure resource usage of the simulated services. But I looked it up, and the measured performance counters are items like simulated throughput, hit rate, and other counters like that. So I guess that makes a lot more sense. We recently introduced support for Dynatrace SaaS monitors in LRE 2020, and Dynatrace Atmon has been supported since PC 12.6 something as well. But now we can also support Dynatrace managed monitors, allowing you to integrate your monitor data with your test results directly in LRE Enterprise. So for this integration to work, either the Dynatrace interface needs to be exposed so that the LRE Enterprise infrastructure in the cloud can access Dynatrace, or more often that a VPN is set up so that this connection can be done without exposing any endpoints through any firewalls. LRE supports quite a few third-party scripting tools since quite some time now, and the support for these are getting better and better in each release. And here now for JMeter, there is support for running tests with the embedded JMeter installation, so that no additional installation of JMeter is required, as it was in previous versions of LRE. It's also possible to control the number of other users and their scheduling during a test run directly from the LRE Enterprise GUI, where in the past this was needed to be set up in JMeter itself. So that really streamlines the JMeter usage from LRE Enterprise. And it's now also possible to view the results for JMeter scripts in the web resources graphs, hits per second, and the throughput graph. And if anyone is using Gatling scripts, there's also been a number of enhancements here. So similar as with the JMeter scripts, you can now run tests with the embedded Gatling installation without any additional Gatling installation required. And you can now also control the number of other users and their scheduling during a test run from inside LRE Enterprise instead of doing that in Gatling. And the same graphs as with JMeter has now also been added, so you can view the hits per second and the throughput graph. And there has also been some further runtime settings tweaks that are now also possible to define for Gatling. Now, for those that doesn't know, Silk Performer is a performance testing tool that comes from the pre-merge Micro Focus side, while the LRE family products comes from the Mercury and the Hewlett Packard side. LRE Enterprise now integrates with Silk Performer, and this new integration enables you to save and run Silk Performer scripts in your LRE Enterprise tests, as you would do with a standard VODN script. And you can now also view the results from the Silk Performer scripts in the LRE graphs and the results. And finally, as a tech preview, we now support Selenium scripts in LRE Enterprise. And Selenium is an open source umbrella project, including a range of tools and libraries that enable and support the automation of web browsers. So it basically provides different extensions to emulate user interaction with different web browsers. And so if that sounds interesting, feel free to look it up, since for now, you don't need a license for running your Selenium scripts, although that might of course change in the future. If we then look at some of the cloud enhancements that's been added, there are now an additional cloud category named Government Cloud US for both AWS and for Azure, which is of course in addition to the standard cloud category. The Government Cloud is, for those who doesn't know, for the US government and their partners, which allow them to set up secure cloud solutions that adhere to a number of federal security requirements. Then, whenever you are provisioning hosts with the cloud template, you now have the option to specify private IP addresses in that template, meaning that public IP addresses won't be assigned when provisioning a cloud host using that template. And lastly, the initializing run screen has been updated with a more modern user interface, where you can now view the provisioning status and also the location of your cloud host being provisioned when a test using cloud host is starting up. So it kind of gives a bit of an international flair when starting up tests with the cloud load generators. The last item I will cover here today is the modernized trend report feature, which has been simplified and yet again given a modern look and feel. Trend reports are a feature that is very useful when you are rerunning the same performance test every time when, for example, a new release of your software has been built or after a new patch has been installed on your system, so that it's easy to see if there's been any performance degradation to the system or not. So this is then useful in the long run, where, for example, a performance degradation has been discovered. And you can then use the trend reports to track back to the origin of the degradation to hopefully see what change might have introduced it. So you can now use the new interface to more easily create reports, manage the test runs trended in the reports, and also to add different trend views. And you can also use, or you can also add customized categories to the reports by using the personalization feature, which allows you to add any of the available trend widgets to your custom report. So that has brought us to the end of this presentation, and I hope that this has been beneficial to you, and I thank you very much for your attention.